what the president has said was that there used to be a 450,000 barrels that was designated for the government-owned refineries that are currently not functioning. That those quantity would be immediately as an immediate response to the situation be given to private refineries. But beyond that, we do know that there are other sources of crude in the country. We marvel at the narrative that there's no crude oil enough to service refineries in Nigeria, and I don't think this is actually correct. You do remember that there was a time, even before now, that you had, first of all, it was a crude swap, and then you had a DCSO, the DSDP arrangement where about 2 million barrels were given to people in a swap deal where they go refine and then they bring in products in. What happens to that? The DSDP, at least at the face of the law, has been abolished. That quantity can also be channeled to private refinery, to the indigenous refineries here in the country. And then the IOCs and the independents, the producers, have never at a point said that they would not sell to us. What they have always insisted on is that, okay, if they want to do business with us, the templates have to be right, the frameworks have to be right. We had never, because the regime of private refineries in Nigeria is quite new, quite green, there was no framework for dealing with private refineries in Nigeria before now. And at the time when we applied for feedstock for our refineries, which was a major condition to getting financing to build your refineries, there was a question as to where do we get the crude from? Would it come from the government's own equity, or would it come from those of the JV partners? And there was no answer. There was no framework to address this. This was where we had the logjam. But with the passage of the PIA, it made it abundantly clear that, look, it does not matter what part of the equity you are getting it from. If you are producing in Nigeria, if you have a license to an acreage in Nigeria, you have an obligation first to a Nigerian refinery before you can export.
While I appreciate that, I mean, you play in the sector, I'm going to reiterate the statement that was put out by the presidency, and you can fact check this anywhere, that the Federal Executive Council has approved that the 450,000 barrels meant for domestic consumption be offered in Naira. While you may have expectations as to what should be, yes, there should be that. Of course, you should be the first priority. I mean, local refiners when it comes to crude, which we own here in Nigeria. But this is what we have to work with now. I understand that you might want to push the envelope to ensure that all of the other available crude is offered to local refineries in Naira first before you then take it out. But say charity begins at home, right? But this is what we have to work with right now. Perhaps in the coming days you can fine-tune those other areas, which is why it's important to have this conversation so we know what to expect. But when you talk about the landing cost of petrol, or rather crude oil, or petrol, I don't know which one you were talking about. Some will say, why are we talking landing cost again? I mean, there is no transportation issue. It is not going over the sea and coming back and all of that. It is not a DSDP, direct deal sale, direct purchase. It's not crude swap. It is crude that is mined here and is just taken next door to a refinery. So where does landing cost come in here again, Mr. Idoko?
So when we talk about landing to cost used here is just semantics. It's more or less like all cost inclusive. And even if you are producing it in country here, there's a bit of transportation. Either you are taking it by pipeline. In some instances you actually even have to barge it, or you're taking it by truck, because some of our members truck their refinery, their crude to the various refineries. So all those costs to be built into whatever is the final cost of this feedstock. So that's why when we refer to it, we refer it at the cost at which it is landing in your refining facility. So at that point, that's the cost at which it landed. Because all those costs has to be borne by somebody, those costs has to be factored into your cost of production. So that's what it means. And then to what you have highlighted, yes, we understand that for now, what we are certain about is that the 450,000 barrels is what the president had spoken to, and that would satisfy the immediate need of the refineries that are producing at the capacity at which they are producing right now. But it's, like I said, it's just only it's an intervention. It's not sustainable. Because when even the refineries that are producing now have capacities of even expansion. So when the other refineries at various stages of completion comes off mainstream, there will be a need to also increase whatsoever is the quantity that would be given to local refineries. And that was why I referred to the fact that there are other sources from which the federal government can guarantee crude to refineries, and that's why I mentioned that quantity.
So if I get you correctly, what you're saying in essence is there is no need for Nigeria to export crude anymore. We have enough refining capacity in-house, at least to refine 1.3 million. Let's first focus on the local refineries before we take it out. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that Nigeria should prioritize the functional refineries in Nigeria first. What we have producing right now, the refineries that are running are not producing, they are not refining up to 1 million barrels. What they are producing is less than 1 million barrels. So I'm saying that for those refineries that are currently functioning, that the Nigerian government should prioritize satisfying their needs. And then they can still export the quantities that they need to export. And as a matter of fact, the NUPRC has a mandate to ensure that there is increase in the production of crude. So you're not saying in essence that because we are going to be consuming 1 million, that the government the government should rest on its responsibility of ramping up production. I know that a lot has been going into farming out more acreages to be able to improve whatever is the quantity that we're producing. At the moment, we're not even meeting OPEC quota. So the NUPRC and whosoever is concerned should also work on increasing whatever quantity they have to be able to satisfy export and also satisfy the home demand. What we are simply saying is that in all this, in whatsoever you are doing, the people back home should be considered first.